Now coming to the technology, we know that now I think the demand for technology is really increasing, and we are going to see the private sector coming with all sorts of gadgets and prices and everything. So what is it that is being done at what level to try and see how best we can get the best in terms of quality and output, and also that we are not ripped off, because as we are compiling the budget for the census, we see that when we bring the...
Ok, donc c'est clair, madame.
What? You have let this
merci beaucoup, c'est clair. L'Angola.
You know,
on a une contrainte de temps, madame, excusez-moi. Désolé, on a une contrainte de temps. Hein.
What is he saying?
Allez, si tu veux terminer, allez, termine. C'est pas grave. Allez.
C'est l'Angola ou...
Okay, thank you. Yes, I know that in most of the meetings that we have had, particularly when we talk about issues relating to technology, even at the UNSD level, there was also talk of how best we can procure this PDAs or tablets or anything in a much reasonable price, not at the same time ripping off the private sector, but also getting the best quality for what we are looking for. So I don't know whether there are any efforts to that effect. We know as we are compiling our budget for the 2016 census, the introduction of technology has really shot our budget very high. It is high for our governments, and also perhaps even the donors may not really take it up. So what is it that we can do to rationalize and bulk procurement, for instance, or something like that? And also maybe the GIS and cartography, we have already done 98% of coverage. So we would like to see if there are any handbooks or manuals that we need to utilize. We also want to help
madame.
As fast as we can. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Stéphane vous répondra, Inch'Allah. L'Angola, et très rapidement, s'il vous plaît.
Ok, je prendrai que 2 minutes, je crois. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole. L'Angola est parmi les pays qui ont réalisé le recensement de la population et de l'habitat dans la série 2010. Après 40 ans du dernier recensement de 1970, encore à l'époque coloniale. L'Angola profite de cette occasion pour vous informer en résumé du résultat préliminaire, en fait provisoire, de son premier recensement après l'indépendance réalisé durant le mois de mai de cette année. L'Angola actuellement compte avec 24 millions et 300 000 habitants, dont 52% du sexe féminin et bien sûr 48% pour le sexe masculin. Plus de 26% de la population est à Luanda, la capitale du pays. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup pour cette rapidité. Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je souhaiterais que chaque fois qu'on cite les pays africains qui ont fait un recensement assisté par ordinateur, qu'on cite la Côte d'Ivoire, qui vient de faire donc son recensement assisté par ordinateur, donc PDA ou smartphone, et qui a terminé en juin dernier, et qui remet la semaine prochaine au gouvernement de Côte d'Ivoire les résultats de ce recensement. Vous avez parlé de cartographie, je parle des sciences cartographiques généralement. Nous avons fait une cartographie censitaire numérique entièrement et nous avons géoréférencié toutes les infrastructures socio-économiques qui sont sur le terrain jusqu'au poteau électrique. Alors la question qui se pose aujourd'hui, nous avons géoréférencié les habitats comme nos collègues du Cap-Vert, mais comment on fait, puisque nous sommes soumis au secret statistique de protection des unités statistiques qui sont les ménages, comment on fait pour exploiter ces données-là et qu'on les mette à la disposition? Je sais qu'on peut anonymiser. Donc la cartographie la cartographie pose le problème aussi de ne pas diffuser les informations personnelles, puisque dans nos pays respectifs, je crois, il doit y avoir des lois qui protègent aussi les individus. Ça, c'est la première chose. La deuxième chose que je voulais évoquer, c'est demander à notre collègue de la Guinée que quand on va finir cette session, il peut venir à une table, on va discuter avec lui de comment on traite ces genres de choses. Okay. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Merci beaucoup. La Tunisie. Non, la Tunisie, c'est qui? Oui, allez.
Bonjour à tous, je me présente, je suis Souhaït Belaïd du ministère de l'Agriculture de la Tunisie. Il s'avère qu'a priori on est une minorité à s'intéresser aux statistiques agricoles. Mes commentaires concernent les deux présentations des Nations Unies. En fait, lors de la présentation de M. Stéphane, il a évoqué les RGA, les recensements généraux de l'agriculture. Donc, j'aurais aimé demander si vous avez aux Nations Unies les mêmes efforts, vous avez fait les mêmes efforts que pour les RGPH. Est-ce que vous disposez donc de manuels, de recommandations et de renforcement de capacité concernant les RGA aussi. Et aussi, donc, j'aurais aimé souligner qu'on aurait aimé avoir une présentation plutôt sur les RGA en liaison avec la thématique donc, de cette session de StatCom. Ça aurait dû être une bonne idée là-dessus. Et pour l'utilisation donc, des systèmes d'information géographique et des PDA, j'aime bien savoir si vous pouvez nous présenter aussi des expériences qui sont faites pour les SIG et les PDA aussi sur les RGA. Donc, parce que la Tunisie se prépare à faire son premier RGA et on compte bien utiliser les systèmes d'information géographique et aussi les PDA donc, pour nos travaux. Donc, je profite aussi pour exprimer la motivation de la Tunisie et son intérêt à échanger avec les autres pays sur ces sujets-là concernant le recensement général de l'agriculture. Et merci.
Merci beaucoup. Madagascar. Oui, monsieur.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Madagascar...
Il nous reste deux interventions de la Tanzanie et Sud-Soudan.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Madagascar compte mener son prochain recensement général de la population et de l'habitat en 2016. Ma question est ceci. Quelle démarche devons-nous mener pour pouvoir bénéficier de l'assistance de la division statistique des Nations Unies dans la réalisation de notre prochain recensement? Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Merci beaucoup. Tanzanie.
Thank you, Chair. Mine goes to UNSD. Of course, Chair, we know that population census without post-enumeration survey is no far incomplete. Chair, I happened to attend one of the workshops conducted by UNSD, Population Division, in Uganda, Kampala, and we had a discussions about the threshold of the post-enumeration survey rate. What is the rate that now when I will get it, I say, okay, this is fine. Shall we say a single digit that starts from 0 to 9% or 10 onwards? So we suggested that for the coming 2020 round of population and housing census, we will like either UNSD to guide the countries to determine that threshold. And also, Chair, we had also discussions with the Census Bureau. Of course, we know PS it's supposed to be done immediately after the enumeration. The issue here is we're still using manual to do the matching, okay, and the reconciliations of the records, which consume a lot of time to have these results out. So this is my plea to have those. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame. Sud-Soudan.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to inform the meeting that South Sudan is in the process of undertaking the first census as an independent country. Of course, we had last population census as one Sudan in 2008. So some of the preparatory work is already underway and hopefully will be conducted in 2016. Sorry. Thank you.
Merci. Dernière intervention de l'Ouganda. Oui, allez. لا un mic ouvert. Un autre, il est ouvert là-bas. Juste en face. Please. Il a deux mics qui sont ouverts. Comme vous clôlez.
Ben. Bon. Here, use this one. Remember to invite them to Uganda.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Uganda was one of the last countries to conduct the census in the 2010 census round, and almost about 95% of the census budget was covered by government. Whereas the exercise was postponed twice. One of the reasons that we are giving for the necessity of the census was because we were at the same time doing registration for the national ID. And the argument was this, that do we really need a census with the national ID? This morning, somebody said that it's the best practice for the national identification to move along with vital events so that it's a complete identification process. In fact, that has created even more trouble. We are planning to do that indeed for the identification process. Now the question is, the 2020 round, of course I will not be there. I would have left. But
Thank you.
I am seeing a threat. I'm seeing a threat because government had refused to fund the census and also fund the national ID. We are looking at them as two processes that were duplicating one another. And this argument went actually as far as the Prime Minister. And I had to defend it. I even reached the extent of defending it at the presidency. Now, is there any way the international statistical community can impress it upon our leaders that a census is you must have it. Without it, you are finished. Thank you.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Alors, donc, je passe la parole à M. Stéphane. C'est plus facile pour moi. Hein.
Well, merci. Thank you. And very quickly, there was a very rich discussion, and I would certainly not be able to answer all the questions. I mean, you've already shared very interesting experience and talked about many of the challenges, again, in the context of your countries. A couple of specific points. There was a question, if I understood it correctly, about agricultural censuses and materials. That is in the hands of our colleagues of the FAO. We share the work. I mean, FAO supports that kind of activity, agricultural statistics, substantively. We don't, in our office, have any information on that. There was the question on how we can support individual countries. We normally can't, because as you've seen, our training activities go usually through regional or sub-regional workshops, and it's very difficult for us to work with individual countries. There are, after all, 193 countries out there, but we have a partner. UNFPA is usually our funding partner, and when they are in a position to help you with the funding, then we sometimes are in a position to help you with technical advice. So this is something we should talk about. Technology sharing and the private sector, I think it's an excellent idea. The more technology we need, and if we integrate with geospatial, the technology dependency is likely to increase. The more, I think there are incentives for all of us to negotiate together with the private sector or use materials repeatedly to the extent possible. And this will have to be addressed best at the sub-regional level, I suspect, because I think this is where you are closest to each other. I think there was one question about when the materials are ready. That is a little bit of a problem for those who are early in the census cycle. I understand that if somebody is having a census, let's say between 2015 and 2018 or 19, which is in the first 4 years, they may not have the benefit of all the materials being ready yet, because we have the dilemma. We are starting now to work on the material, and many of them will be ready over the next 2 to 3 years. In a way, we are accompanying the process, perhaps of a country that would be working towards a 2020 census, the midpoint. So we start first on the things that come early in your cycle, cartography, come early in our cycle. But there's also, I mean, there's a dilemma for us. You may say, why don't you have everything ready now? Well, then those who are coming late in the process and planning a 2022 or 2023 census, they would accuse us of writing history books, because if we give them something that we worked on in 2015, that would not help them. So we have to somehow aim for the middle. But here I have a suggestion for those who are early in the cycle: work with us. Because many of the handbooks, we are working in open processes with expert groups. So if you are interested in a particular topic and you are early in the process, let us know. And we can also make you available early drafts of something that is being discussed in an expert group. So let's just be practical about this. Pali's suggestions to bring the two commissions together. This is something which I would we really hope for in the long run. I don't know when would be the right moment to do that. We are certainly in the hands of the countries to discuss this. I think the geospatial community has made considerable efforts to get their community together. So I hope I don't misrepresent my friends from the geospatial community when I say they are perhaps a little bit afraid of being taken over by this big statistical machine that has a lot of experience and has a lot of history. And so I think we will have to work this out, how we can march close and parallel for a short period of time and really work towards the vision of doing things together, both at the national and at the global level. And then your last suggestions of bringing this really to the attentions of the highest level in the United Nations, that means my Secretary General, and at the country level, that means to your head of state, is critical, because I mean there has to be buy-in and support, and we will definitely, I will use the interest that exists at the highest levels right now, and the Secretary General is definitely watching our Statistical Commission session closely. We will use that to bring also the results to his attention and perhaps invite him to be part of this new exciting declaration resolution that launches the 2020 census round. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. There were not many questions, except 1 or 2 questions were there. I think this issue, something has already been tackled by you in terms of the early people who come in early. So that was tackled. In terms of the proposal that I made on, we made on the Center of Excellence. I mean, this was a proposal which came up 2-3 years ago. We really need to have a systematic way of having census training. It's not workshops or workshops. They are one-off workshops. But I think we need to gather all the information, all the knowledge that is there, and conduct regular trainings on census. And I think these 3 institutions that we were talking about, those can be the starting points of Center of Excellence, and we can promote that. The African addendum, I think, again, it's too early. Maybe we can start thinking about it now, but I don't think, even if we try our best, it may not come before April, middle of April, because we have to absorb the principles and recommendations, have a workshop, have expert group, and then finally get into an African addendum. But I think it will be needed, and we will have it, but not very soon, maybe in the middle of 2016. Choice of technology, I think there is a manual on how to manage technology and contract, but I think there is no manual on how to choose technology. The step-by-step, I mean, what kind of technology should you choose? And how do you manage a contract? How do you get into a contract? That's up for outsourcing. So that's something that we have to think about. And lastly, Uganda's point on national ID, I think we have not reached a stage where we use the national, first of all, the national ID is 16 plus, 18 plus. So it's never a population register. So only in countries like Namibia or Botswana, where they have 0 to whatever age the population, they are calling it population register, but still it's not ripe enough to take population data from there. Because first of all, it has problems of geography, location IDs, so you cannot have a no African country is ready to have a full-blown register that can be used for census. I think 11 European countries have done this time, but we are far. I think we have to continue for census for at least 2 more decades before we get into the population register.
Thank you. I will respond to the question in the language it came. The first one, it came, I think, from Cameroon, it's in French. On parlait de renouvellement du matériel du PDA. Donc, il est vrai qu'au début, quand les PDA étaient construits à l'interne, donc ça posait un problème de redéploiement. Comment on va redéployer l'utilisation des dispositifs donc, mobiles. Et bon, il y a eu des problèmes. Le cas du Brésil, par exemple, ils font des prêts à d'autres pays ou à d'autres organisations nationales. Donc, ils font un peu. C'est vrai, c'est un problème. Mais de plus en plus, le problème est moindre maintenant à cause de, par exemple, si on utilise les tablettes, et il sera plus facile de les déployer au niveau de l'éducation, donc ça pose de moins de problèmes pour le renouvellement donc, des dispositifs mobiles. I think I missed the lady from what country, I think Guinea, when she asked about pricing and guidelines. Let me inform you that on Monday and Tuesday, ECA, as I mentioned it, ECA held a meeting, or an expert group meeting on mobile devices, and they are preparing guidelines to provide some, guidelines on the prices and the list of technologies, and what are the requirements. There is guidelines. I think I can refer you to my colleague Ali from ECA. He's preparing these guidelines. For GIS and cartography, I already mentioned in my presentation, there is a handbook. I told you this is a bestseller. If you can give me your email, I will send you a copy for this. We have a handbook on geospatial infrastructure, and it will guide you how to, step by step, how to build a geographic database and how to, from the data collection until the data dissemination. Now for the Côte d'Ivoire, pour la Côte d'Ivoire, vous avez parlé, je pense, des problèmes de confidentialité. Vous avez dit que nous étions jusqu'au minage, donc comment je peux faire, ou jusqu'au poteau électrique même. Donc, moi je pense, un élément de solution, c'est d'utiliser 2 géographies. Une géographie pour la collection des données, donc c'est pour vous-même, et une collection pour la diffusion. Où à ce moment-là, vous allez obligé d'être agrégé à un certain niveau où vous allez conserver la confidentialité. Donc, un élément de solution, c'est 2 géographies. Une géographie pour la collecte des données, une géographie pour la diffusion des données. Pour la Tunisie, oui, pour la Tunisie, vous avez demandé s'il y a des éléments, des expériences dans l'utilisation des SIG et des PDA dans le recensement agricole. En effet, le Brésil, en 2007, a commencé, c'était un pionnier à utiliser les PDA pour le recensement agricole. Quelle expérience a été transmise, je pense, ce que je répète encore, au Cap-Verde. Et le Cap-Verde a déjà annoncé que la prochaine étape, ils vont l'utiliser pour leur recensement agricole. Donc, je vous suggère de contacter les pays qui sont et le Brésil ou le Cap-Vert. Voilà, je pense que j'ai couvert un peu les questions qui me concernent pour l'utilisation des SIG et des outils géospatiaux. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Je crois on va lever... Ah, tu veux commenter quelque chose? Avant de passer à la pause.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a very brief point that when we put this session together and wanted the GEO people to be in this session, the reason we did that was that when we listened to some of the assessment for the round of 2010, we found that there's a lot of questions on cartography and GIS. And we thought that some of those questions can be answered or may not arise if we realize that in our governments, there is a whole department or ministry responsible for geoinformation, and that we're actually doing what, if we involve them, will not be a problem. And so we put it together hoping that in this discussion, we can then start planning for the 2020 round to see how, at the beginning, we can make it an interdepartmental or interministerial project to, so that the population people do not have to go and acquire resources and do what there's a whole ministry being paid for. You have people who are paid salaries by government to do what you're now going to hire consultants or people to do again. And that was exactly why we put this session together to say, can we have the two groups come together? And then from there, hopefully when you go back and start planning the 2020 round, to see where possible to plan it as an interdepartmental or interministerial thing where they will do what they're trained to do and are paid to do that. That's why we put this session together as a joint session. Thank you.
Oui. Et très rapide. Il faut éteindre ces mics-là, s'il vous plaît. À côté de toi, il faut éteindre le mic. Voilà. You can.
Merci. Je voudrais tout simplement, je suis de la FAO, bureau régional de la FAO pour l'Afrique à Accra. Je voudrais un peu intervenir dans le cadre des recensements de l'agriculture, puisque comme la division statistique des Nations Unies, la FAO est l'institution technique responsable d'appuyer les pays dans le domaine des recensements et donc agricoles. Et donc en ce qui concerne les recensements agricoles, au niveau de la FAO, nous avons aussi tous les 10 ans, comme la division statistique des Nations Unies, nous proposons des programmes de recensement généraux de l'agriculture. Donc nous sommes dans notre 9e recensement de l'agriculture qui couvre la période 2006-2015. Et donc nous avons aussi des guides méthodologiques. Vous pouvez avoir des guides méthodologiques pour vous aider à réaliser les recensements de l'agriculture. Nous sommes en train de préparer aussi le programme mondial 2020, au même rythme que la division statistique des Nations Unies.
Une recommandation pour la Tunisie, s'il vous plaît, elle a demandé une assistance en la matière.
Oui, nous sommes aussi, en plus des aspects normatifs, c'est-à-dire en plus des aspects guides méthodologiques, nous avons aussi un programme de terrain. Nous sommes en train de soutenir environ 12 pays à l'heure actuelle dans le cadre des recensements de l'agriculture. Et donc la Tunisie peut aussi bénéficier du soutien de la FAO dans ce domaine. Merci.
Ok, merci beaucoup et je vous invite à la pause. Allez. Pour reprendre dans 15 minutes. Chers collègues, est-ce qu'on peut commencer? C'est vous que vous allez. Alors, j'appelle le représentant de la CEA pour présenter la coordination des programmes et activités statistiques avec les agences des Nations Unies et les organisations internationales. You can start.
Sorry to come back. This is a session on.
S'il vous plaît, vous avez 5 minutes.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Okay. 5 minutes. Yeah. I have 2 slides. Yeah. So enhancing UN coordination in Africa for improved data for development. And this is basically about the UN coordination, because I think this is a session on coordination. So I picked up, I just did 2 slides to understand what it is and how we will coordinate and what we should do to do more coordination for improved data for development. I think this is, I call it a maze. It's an official statistics architecture. If you look at this architecture, you will see that at the global level, you have the United Nations Statistics Division, you have UN agencies, then you have the IMF, the World Bank, and many other agencies which are at the global level. When you come to the regional level, you have again the UN agencies which have regional office, some of them do not have regional offices. And then you have ECA, African Development Bank, African Union Commission as one block, which works together. And then you have the UN agencies. At the sub-regional office, you have a sub-regional level, you have AfriStat, the REX. You also have, which I didn't put because it would have been a too complicated diagram, we have the sub-regional offices of the ECA, which are the SROs. And, and at the regional level, you have what is called the Regional Coordination Mechanism, which includes the liaison offices of UN organizations, liaison offices to the AU and the ECA. But that's called the RCM. And at the national level, you of course have the National Statistics Office, the line ministries, the UN country offices. Now, when you look at the coordination mechanism at the global level, what you will see is there are broadly three mechanisms and the statistics. One is the IEAG, the Interagency and Expert Group, which came into being after the MDGs were there. So IEAG is led by one UN agency or World Bank or IMF, depending on the indicator of MDG. You have the CCSA, and you also have the UN StatCom. And if you look at the membership on even the participation of the different agencies at the global level, you will find that all the UN agencies, the UNSD, IMF, World Bank, they all are in the StatCom. They are all in the CCSA, and most of them are in the IEAG. So there is a global coordination mechanism which is there among all these partners. But actually, when you come to the regional level, there is a complete lack of coordination between the UN agencies and the 3 statistical bodies that we have. So what basically happens is, anything that happens, let's say if we take, for example, UNICEF or UNICEF, the UNICEF regional office doesn't have a statistical function, really speaking. So basically, you are not able to collaborate with any regional office of UNICEF or regional office of WHO. So the mandate of these organizations are from headquarters to the national level, not even at the sub-regional level. So I think that's one of the gaps that we are finding. So if anything is being attempted in Africa in terms of statistical activity planned by the UN agency globally, it directly goes to the country without the knowledge of the I'm not saying you have to have all knowledge, but what I'm trying to say is there is a lack of coordination mechanism at the regional level so far UN agencies are concerned. Of course, we don't find UN agencies coming to the StatCom or CoDGs. Not all of them are represented. FAO is here. I believe sometimes ILO, I don't know whether ILO is here, but this is very ad hoc. They may decide to come, may not decide to come. But there are many surveys, many statistical activities which are carried out by these UN agencies directly with the countries. So that's what the message I wanted to give. And of course, you have the coordination mechanisms and all that, but we need to see how we involve the UN agencies more at a regional level to make sure all the coordination. It's not, this is only not on coordination, it is also about the data flow. The data flows directly from the countries to UNSD, to the UN offices, and it particularly on social sector. And even IMF and World Bank data guide directly goes there. That's one issue. Secondly, it's also about capacity building. There are workshops held by various UN agencies for which you don't have coordination with the regional group. That is the ECA, African Development Bank, and the AUC. So I think there is a big gap that we need to address. So what we have is, we would like to have active participation of UN agencies at the continental level on statistical activities, active participation of UN offices in NSDS process and in-country coordination, because you cannot go to a line ministry and do a survey without the knowledge of the NSDS, being a part of the NSDS process or even a part of the coordination mechanism. I think there should be joint effort on capacity development at regional level in collaboration with global and regional UN entities, training and technical assistance. Technical level statistical coordination body is needed at the country level, which brings these UN agencies together. And I think we should have more and more SDMX there, so that the data flow is also, there should not be a situation where everybody approaches a country for data. 5 agencies approaching for the same set of data. So I think SDMX is a good solution. We should work towards it. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup. J'appelle Joseph. Merci beaucoup pour cette présentation. Et le problème de la coordination des programmes donc reste toujours posé. Ouais. C'est un processus aussi. Hein. Allez, Joseph. Ah, d'accord. Les surprises de Yao. Allez.
C'est quoi le nom de la présentation?
Il me semble que c'est celui-là.
Workshop. L'agency EDB.
Le second slide en même temps.
Second slide.
Oui, oui.
Demande M. Palais de se préparer pour...
Je suis avec Joseph. Mon nom c'est Lawson, de la Banque africaine de développement. Je vais vous entretenir sur la collaboration et la coordination entre la banque et les autres institutions panafricaines. A collaboration and coordination between AFDB and Pan-African institutions on NSDS evaluation. The main objective is to have better synergy and more impacts and no conflicts with major stakeholders. And our specific objective, oh, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Collaboration and coordination between AFDB and Pan-African Institution on NSDS evaluation. The main objective is to have better synergy and more impacts and no conflicts with major stakeholders. Our specific objective co-financing or parallel financing in the context of government program under the National Strategy for the Development of Statistics. And the task, the activities are to have joint preparation of projects and joint evaluation mission. Over the past year, out of 5 joint mission planned for 2014, 4 were conducted as so far, namely Nigeria, Madagascar, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, in collaboration with Paris 21. The one for Djibouti was postponed to January 2015 due to the Djiboutian Authority conflicting agenda. The main objective of this joint evaluation mission were first, to review the progress of implementation of the NSDS. Second, to learn from this implementation. And 3, to propose adjustment for the NSDS originally developed to achieve its objective and results. The key finding for this joint evaluation mission: challenges have been identified in the national statistical system that need to be addressed in the context of the revised first generation of NSDS or the second generation under preparation. These include the revision of the statistical acts that define the national statistical system to include the sector statistical functions, the governance organ and their responsibilities, the coordination of the statistical system, and sustainable financing sources. 2, strategic orientation of national statistical development for supporting result measurement and monitoring and evaluation of the national development plans and their work program, especially at the sector and various administrative levels. In this regard, sector development and statistical strategies should be planned under the NDP, National Development Plans. In some countries, they used to phase it, taking some sector at the beginning and then phasing out. But we think that if you have to feed, you have 4 children you want to feed, and you have resources for only 2 children, what can we do? 3, statistical manpower, human resources, especially statistical training and infrastructure development to meet the need of the current and anticipated structure on the national statistical system, including NSO, field office, and the demand for training and or establishing statistical function and databases in NSO and line ministries, departments, and agencies. We insist in statistical training because, I'm moving too much. We are insisting in statistical training because we have lots of data, but we have lack of analysis. So there are some special domain we have to focus on. Like, for example, when we are looking for access to safe water and so on, we need specialized statisticians like epidemiologists, for example. So we have to organize training in those specialties in sector ministries. 4, data generation, management, and dissemination that take into account the need of users developing skills for data analysis and management and emphasizing administrative statistical system in sectors. 5, formulation and implementation of sector strategies and development plans and statistical function as the building blocks for the development of the national statistical system. And finally, ensuring sustainable, robust, and broad-based funding mechanism for the national statistical system that rely largely on the national budget and coordinated donors' contribution under the NSDS. This is what we have done so far. So I have only 600 seconds. I just summarize here some recommendations. The NSDS valuation is done on first-come, first-served basis. Therefore, countries should send their requests to the director of the statistics department. Used to do the same thing for the preparation of country statistical profile. We call it CSTP. This is internal program within the bank because usually we program strategy papers for country, for our assistance in the country. Before this, yes, we prefer this CSTP.
Tu peux synthétiser, aller un petit peu vite.
Yes. Okay. NSO should work closely with the Ministry of Planning for some funding attached to the bank finance projects in the country. This comes from the recommendation we have done, proposed to our management, and the management approved that to mobilize funds for such development in the country, we will set aside a percentage of the total cost of each project financed in the sector for the development of statistics in the country. And it is the NSO to manage this fund. So I have exhausted my time. I have more to say. For our 2015 program, it is an indicative program, but we finalize it. We focus mainly in evaluation of NSDS. We will strengthen the collaboration between ADB and the other stakeholders, UNA.
2 minutes.
We also diagnostic and evaluation of national statistical system and proposal for improved statistical support for national development plans and monitoring and evaluation system in selected countries. We choose 12 countries for 2015. And then we have organized leadership and management training workshop. The specific objective, ensuring that the NSDS are aligned to the national development strategies and priorities. 2, identifying challenges to the national statistical system and implementation of the NSDS. 3, development of sector statistics as the foundation of the NSDS. And then 4, proposal for financing NSDS program with the leadership of the government budget. The activities are the following: reviewing the existing NSDS and the national development strategies and the program in 10 or 12 selected regional member countries, and to what extent the NSDS are aligned to the national development strategies and priorities. 2, review in selected countries the program of the NSDS and to what extent they address the challenges to the statistical system. 3, review sector statistical challenges and the extent sector statistical strategies are incorporated in the NSDS. And 4, review the financing sources of the NSDS and the challenges to adequate financing. Prepare proposal for implementing the NSDS within the country budgetary constraint. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup pour cet exposé. Monsieur Pali, à vous la parole.
No, Chair.
Tu veux pas venir?
Yes, I have to explain myself sitting here that the ISI had proposed to address.
Vous avez donc 5 minutes.
Pardon? Yes.
5 minutes.
Yeah, no, 1 minute.
Okay, very good.
The ISI had proposed that they wish to address us here. And I submitted the proposal to the committee, and they accepted. But the ISI hasn't shown up, so there isn't much I can submit. It was the ISI that was supposed to have come and presented. However, let me say that there is the International Statistics Institute, the World Congress meeting in Brazil next year, and as we know that we hosted the ISI in South Africa in 2009. We would expect ourselves as Africans to participate in that and not only go there, but present technically sound papers at the ISI. The second thing that the ISI was hoping for is to look at how we can partner in the area of training, and they've been working with AGROST. That was what they wanted to come and present to us and discuss. But now that they don't have their representative, I cannot say more than that. Thank you, Chair. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, donc, on va ouvrir la discussion donc, sur ces trois petites présentations portant sur la coordination des activités statistiques. Et on va commencer par Madame de la Ligue arabe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Huda Aboullail. I am the director of the Department of Statistics and Databases in the League of Arab States. I want to give you a brief about the statistical work in the Arab League, but I will speak in Arabic. Thank you. أود في البداية أن أشكر المنظمين.
Excuse me. Est-ce que pour la traduction c'est bon? Elle peut parler en arabe?
I talked to them and they agree to do translation.
Allez, madame, okay.
أود في البداية أن أشكر المنظمين لجنة الأمم المتحدة الاقتصادية لإفريقيا والاتحاد الإفريقي والجمهورية التونسية على الدعوة الكريمة لجامعة الدول العربية للمشاركة في هذا الاجتماع المهم. واسمحوا لي أن أخص بالشكر المعهد القومي للإحصاء في تونس وعلى رأسه أخي الفاضل الهادي السعيدي، والشكر موصول لفريق العمل لأخي الكريم حمودة بن لمين نقطة الاتصال مع جامعة الدول العربية وجميع أعضاء فريق العمل على الحفاوة وحسن الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة الذي عهدناه من أشقائنا في الجمهورية التونسية. نشأت جامعة الدول العربية منذ قرابة 70 عاما في عام 1945، وهي تتكون من 22 دولة عربية، 10 منها تقع في إفريقيا، وال 12 دولة موجودة في آسيا. وهناك كان تعاون طويل في العمل الإحصائي مع لجنة الإسكوا منذ بداية العمل الإحصائي في الجامعة. جامعة الدول العربية أمينها العام الحالي هو الدكتور نبيل العربي، وهي تولي اهتماما كبيرا للتعاون مع إفريقيا، ولدينا آليات قوية لهذا التعاون. فهناك القمة العربية الإفريقية التي عقدت دورتها الثالثة في نوفمبر من العام الماضي في دولة الكويت، ولدينا حاليا بعثة نشيطة في أديس أبابا، وهي البعثة الدائمة لدى لجنة الأمم المتحدة الاقتصادية في إفريقيا، وأيضا لدى الاتحاد الإفريقي. وربما كان التعاون في مجال الإحصاء كان متأخرا قليلا، أو حتى أعتقد أنه كان طال لفترة طويلة لم يكن هناك تعاون جاد، ولكن بدأنا هذا العام، وإن شاء الله سنحاول أن يكون أكثر وأكثر لخدمة ولمصلحة دولنا المشتركة. اللجنة الفنية الدائمة للإحصاء أنشئت من قبل المجلس الاقتصادي والاجتماعي عام 1970، وهي مكونة من رؤساء الأجهزة الإحصائية في الدول العربية، ولديها 4 لجان فرعية، وأيضا هناك عدد من فرق العمل أحدثها فريق تطوير التسجيل المدني والإحصاءات الحيوية في الدول العربية. وأعتقد أنه هذه كان نقطة البداية في المشاركة مع الاتحاد مع اللجنة مع الجانب الإفريقي عامة، لأنه التجربة الإفريقية في هذا المجال غنية ومتميزة. وقد عقد هذا الفريق اجتماعه الأول في مايو الماضي، وشاركت فيه اليو ان إيكا، وهو يتم العمل فيه بالتعاون مع منظمة الصحة العالمية ومكتبها الإقليمي بالقاهرة. وإنني إذ أهنئ اللجنتين الإحصائيتين للإيكا وللإيو على هذا الاجتماع الناجح المثمر، والذي يعطي نموذجا رائدا في كيفية التنسيق والعمل المشترك. فإنني أتطلع إلى أن يكون هناك أعمال مشتركة أيضا مع جامعة الدول العربية في المجال الإحصائي. ولا أريد أن أطيل عليكم، وشكرا لكم.
Merci beaucoup, madame. شكرا جزيلا. Oui. Oui, allez.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Kanyanda from Paris 21, and I would like to agree with the African Development Bank on the partnership that we have been working in evaluating the national strategy for the development of statistics. But I would also like to confirm that the updated or new version of NSDS guidelines has already been developed, and they were already approved by the board of Paris 21 and they are currently in use in a number of countries. And also that they have taken into consideration a number of socio-economic developments, including the data revolution, subnational statistical system, and proposals to include subnational and geospatial activities. So we are working firmly with our partners, African Development Bank and ECA in that line. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Le FAO.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voulais dire que la FAO est vraiment en phase avec la présentation qui a été faite avec la CEA, puisque la coordination des programmes entre les institutions, les agences des Nations Unies est un sujet important. Et il est important au niveau de la FAO qui a déjà aussi relevé cela comme une question qu'il faut commencer à discuter avec les autres organisations pour trouver une solution. Et si je suis là aussi, c'est parce que mon ADG m'a demandé de venir à cette réunion pour voir aussi comment, par exemple, la FAO et la CEA peuvent déjà commencer à travailler dans ce sens, c'est-à-dire la coordination des activités. Bon, vous savez que entre la FAO et la CEA, il y a un Memorandum of Understanding pour travailler en collaboration sur un certain nombre d'aspects sur le développement, mais il y a aussi la statistique. Donc, je voudrais vraiment que, à partir des propositions qui sont faites, si on peut déjà dégager des activités concrètement, des activités que nous pouvons mener d'ici l'année prochaine, parce que l'information que je vais donner, c'est que FAO Rome a affecté un statisticien au niveau du bureau sous-régional en Éthiopie. Et un de ses rôles sera aussi de travailler avec la CEA dans le domaine des statistiques. Donc déjà, au niveau de la FAO, il y a quelque chose de concret. Je voudrais qu'il y ait une recommandation plus forte pour que nous puissions vraiment entamer cette collaboration. Merci.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Et c'est noté cette recommandation-là. Je crois qu'il n'y a pas de questions. Allez. 2 dernières interventions. Oh. Excusez-moi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kenya,
Okay.
just an intervention. I think we have agreed that the coordination mechanism between the Pan-African institution and the UN agencies need to be strengthened. But from the NSO perspective, if we have a strong coordinated mechanism, it will ease on the data flow and the data request, and we could also borrow from what is being done by the African Development Bank on coming up with the open data portal. And because we've uploaded a lot of data from there, such that we do not get requests from all the Pan-African institutions, what we should be worried about is how do we update, ensure that we regularly update the data, and ensure that the data that is requested is there, and the issues of quality. So the strengthening of the coordination is key, and it will lessen our work. Thank you.
Merci. La Libye. Puis l'Afrique du Sud. On termine par la gauche, puis on va venir à la droite.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. أنا سوف أنتهز الفرصة في أنه في هذه الفرصة النادرة التي يوجد فيها ترجمة للغة العربية لأعبر عن هذا الموقف الحقيقة، لأنه مهما حضرنا من اجتماعات، مهما حضرنا من ورش عمل، كانت اللغة العربية دائما مغيبة ولا يوجد ترجمة للغة العربية.
Traduction, s'il vous plaît. Et ça sera la dernière intervention en arabe, malheureusement. Allez.
الحقيقة لا ندري لماذا هذا التغييب للغة العربية مع أنها إحدى اللغات الرسمية للاتحاد الأفريقي، فهي موجودة فقط في شعار الاتحاد الأفريقي في كل الوثائق التي موجودة لدينا. أنا أحيي السيدة هدى أبو الليل الذي تمثلنا من جامعة الدول العربية على اهتمامها وحضورها معنا هنا اليوم في هذا الاجتماع. في الحقيقة أننا ربما نستطيع أن بشكل أو بآخر أن نسوي الأمور باستخدام اللغة الإنجليزية واللغة الفرنسية، ولكن لأن اللغة العربية هي إحدى اللغات الرسمية للاتحاد، فيجب أن تكون حاضرة في الاجتماعات وفي ورش العمل وفي المناقشات لجميع الدول. أنا لا أدري لماذا أسقطت اللغة العربية، ولكن أرجو أن تكون حاضرة في الاجتماعات المقبلة. هذا الكلام لا يضحك الحقيقة، أن تكون اللغة العربية لغة 12 دولة في الاتحاد الأفريقي، فهذا الحقيقة شيء أن يكون يجب أن يكون محل اهتمام، أن تكون اللغة العربية. أنا فقط الآن لا أتهم أحدا في إسقاطها، ولكن فقط ربما لسبب أو لآخر لم توضع في الأجندات السابقة، فأرجو أن يتم اتخاذها في الاعتبار باعتبار أنها سيادة للدول التي لها عضوية كاملة في الاتحاد. شكرا سيد الرئيس.
شكرا جزيلا سيد دكتور. مصر. Egypt.
Please, I will speak in Arabic.
In English.
أضم صوتي.
Please. مش تصير الترجمة لأنه في
Isn't there translation to English or?
Yes, you must speak English.
There is a translation.
Yeah, English.
English?
Oui.
Okay, but I would to talk in Arabic to to make a stress to join my voice to my brother in Libya in congratulation Miss Hoda Abu Lil as a representative of a huge amount of it is an agent, a huge agent, which is Arabic University or Gama Al Arabiya, Arab Ligo. It have to be as an Arabic language. I ask you to put the Arabic language beside English and French in the next times. Agree or not?
المشكلة ما هيش مشكلة لغة، مشكلة مترجمين ما عندناش بالعدد الكافي. أجاوبتك بالعربي يعني. Le problème c'est un problème de traducteur. On n'a pas un nombre suffisant de traducteurs. Je crois, M. Antonio va parler aussi de la portugaise, de la langue portugaise.
Oui, c'est vrai. Donc l'article 25 de la Constitution de l'Union africaine dit que la langue officielle c'est l'arabe, c'est l'anglais, c'est le portugais et c'est le français. C'est un problème d'égalité de tous les pays qui participent dans cette réunion. On représente presque 50 millions de population, les pays lusophones. Et moi, j'ai déjà battu beaucoup de fois dans cette réunion. Bon, et prochainement, je vais parler en portugais. Parce que j'ai vu que quand on parle seulement en anglais, les francophones ne comprennent pas. Quand on parle en anglais, les autres ne comprennent pas. Pourquoi on a toujours la traduction par le français et pour l'anglais, on n'a pas de les autres langues? Les autres pays ne sont pas plus importants que les autres. Okay. Donc c'est important de respecter l'article 25 de la Constitution de l'Union africaine, et aussi l'article 26 qui parle de la traduction. Merci.
Ok. S'il vous plaît, restons sur les présentations. Je crois que c'est une question qui concerne l'Union africaine. Yahoo, est-ce que tu veux réagir? Mais très rapidement, hein, on ne va pas créer peut-être un petit problème sur ça. Oui. Non, moins d'une minute. Okay.
30 secondes. Je voulais rassurer tout le monde. Effectivement, les langues de travail de l'Union africaine, nous avons 4 langues. L'arabe, le français, l'anglais et le portugais. On me dit encore l'espagnol, donc ça fait 5. Mais souvent, pour des réunions de questions de budgétaire, on se limite à ça. Mais je pense que la prochaine fois, nous allons faire un effort pour que les 4 langues soient les langues de votre groupe de travail. Mais souvent, c'est des problèmes budgétaires qui font ça. Souvent. Merci.
C'est un engagement de Yahoo. Ok, je crois qu'on va passer maintenant à l'autre session. Oh, excusez-moi. L'Afrique du Sud, allez. Et très rapidement, s'il vous plaît, on a vraiment dépassé le temps.
Thank you very much. I think, the issues around language have been noted and we have to really take them into account. I was not going to contribute in this, but as a person who is English speaking, at times when there's no English translation, those who are English speaking actually react so violently, worse than any other. And this issue is important to raise because there must be equality of facility for interpretation. So we have to but Raj, you didn't make any specific recommendation. You pointed out the problems, and I think you were saying to us, how do we solve this problem? I think my brother from Kenya stole my thunder. We actually have to follow through with what he has suggested. But we also need at a global level organize ourselves consistent with the Paris Declaration for Aid Effectiveness and all those protocols that govern how the global systems come into countries. And in country, we actually have to be better organized because we are our worst enemies. And that's why we get this disjointed intervention. So let's try and organize our systems better. Thanks, Chair.
OK. Merci beaucoup. Dernière intervention. Oui. Dernière intervention. Et très rapidement, s'il vous plaît. Very quickly.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais m'adresser à mon grand frère Pali. Est-ce que l'Institut international de la statistique ne peut pas s'ouvrir également à d'autres langues? Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Merci beaucoup pour ta gentillesse. Monsieur Pali, tu veux répondre ou... Une question que... Il t'a posé une question. Il t'a posé une question.
I think what we need to do, I mean, from my own office, I've realized that we are deficient and we need to know other languages. So we've chosen NCI in Cote d'Ivoire as a model institution where we can go and study in French. We would also like to go and study in Arabic so that we can bridge these differences. Can we imagine if all Africa speaks the language of the colonizers, what we can do? If we manage that, we can actually do fantastic things. If we speak and manage the language of the colonizers, we can defeat colonialism. It's important.
J'espère bien, j'espère bien. Très rapidement, s'il vous plaît. Très, très rapidement, parce qu'on va passer. Vraiment, on n'a pas...
Okay, very briefly, I'm not going to get into the language thing. That's for some other thing. But on the coordination, we have been requested by the auditors to develop a standard operating procedure on how to collect data. And in that, we made some proposals which we are discussing with the FAO on how to help countries coordinate at the country level so that we don't have to report many times. And when we are trying to use Tanzania and Burkina Faso as pilots to develop the process, and then we'll propose it to all the countries to use. So we are working on that. There was actually the auditors requested us to have this standard operating procedure, and we developed it, and we proposed to work with the FAO because they have a national technical working group for their country start, and we're trying to build on that, and we use 2 countries as pilot, and then we'll roll it out to everybody to get your input on that. So we're working on that.
Merci beaucoup. Donc j'appelle les représentants de la Commission de l'Union africaine, la CEA, la BAD, présenter tout d'abord. Donc, ok, on va apporter par la suite la Tanzanie. Donc pour présenter donc les résultats du rapport sur le 6e forum sur le développement de la statistique en Afrique. Allez. « 5 minutes maximum, s'il vous plaît. Hein. Maximum 5 minutes. La Tanzanie aussi. Et l'OCDE, un représentant de l'OCDE, pour parler des statistiques fiscales. Stop, il n'a pas encore commencé.
Comme vous avez le communiqué avec vous, donc je vais parler brièvement de les recommendations with a free objective of FASTEV. It's 2 slides. So we just recall the objective of FASTEV, the Forum on African Statistical Development, to provide an overview of statistical activities, support in terms of technical assistance, and training in Africa. The second objective of FASTEV is to set up a permanent system for monitoring of assistance and statistical capacity building in Africa, and create synergy and increase the collaboration between partners and donors. So, in terms of communiqué, After the discussion, the FASTEV deliberate and made the following recommendation. The country should mainstream their national strategy into the PRSP, in particular in the national budget, to ensure sustainable funding from domestic resource for NSTS. This is in response to the important remarks made by the delegates from Tanzania. We should not consider statistics anymore as a component, a tool in terms of monitoring and evaluation of PRSP, National Development Plan, but we should consider the NSTS as a development of a country in the National Development Plan, like water, infrastructure, electricity, and all these key areas. So statistics should be mainstreamed as an integral part of the PRSP. So far, we have only like 5 or 6 countries where the NSTS is mainstreamed in the national development plans. We have the example of Tunisia, it's part of the national development plans, Côte d'Ivoire, and 3 countries in SADC. For the other countries, it's an element of monitoring and evaluation, and the funding from the national budget is not guaranteed as long as it is not part of the national development plan. The second recommendation is to improve the methodology and reporting of partner reporting mechanism and the country reporting mechanism. The methodology has to be improved because in the report we saw something like there is a loan from the World Bank, like 20 million to improve economic management and good governance, and statistics is only 1 million of it, a sub-component, but in the report it is said that 20 million for statistics. We have also the same remarks made by the FAO regional office, and in this reporting we have also a problem because ECA and ADB jointly manage the agricultural statistics for 10 millions, and the report said 10 million from ECA, 10 million from ADB, and this has to be shared between the two organizations. So in terms of reporting on the objective of FASTEV is to improve the reporting. Paris 21 is encouraged to work with the regional organizations like ECA and ADB to improve this reporting mechanism. The same remark on funding from UNFPA. UNFPA receives several funds from European Union, World Bank on censuses. It's not UNFPA support. UNFPA just provides secretariat. The third recommendation is to scale the revenue of statistical office in terms of tax, statistical tax, and innovative funding for national budget and the data revolution. The fifth recommendation is request ECA ADB to advocate for funding for the increased data needs required for the post-2015 agenda, the Sustainable Development Goal, and the international data revolution. And the communique recommend ECA and Paris 21 to organize the high-level conference on data revolution in March 2015, next to the conference of Minister of the AUC and ECA. The last recommendation, recommend partners to use the NSTS as the main framework for supporting statistics and to provide institutional support or budget support instead of earmark funding or supporting specific activities. What the delegate made the remark is when donor comes, they want to fund demographic health survey, they want to support census, but there is no funding to build the capacity in terms of institutional support. But institutional support will provide long-term support if the statistical office have access to administrative data and there's sufficient fund. We don't need to make survey anymore for compilation of national accounts. And call on ECA and World Bank to organize the next FASTEV in 2016. ECA requested to provide a summary of country reports. This is a request from main partners because they want to know, to provide an overview of level of domestic financing. We are talking always about partner support, but until now there is no accurate information how much is the contribution from countries. And that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Merci beaucoup pour la synthèse de votre présentation. Je passe directement la parole à Madame donc pour présenter l'indice d'intégration régionale. Madame, vous avez 5 minutes. S'il vous plaît, essayons de respecter le temps. 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the working group, I would like to present to you African Regional Integration Index. Chair, as all of us we are aware, Africa's future and aspiration regarding regional integration are embedded under the chart of the Organization of African Unity, Minimum Integration Program, and the Agenda 2063, as it was being explained here during the open ceremony, that this Agenda 2063, it intends to respond to 2015 post-development agenda and to have the poverty in Africa, and especially the extreme poverty that is food. How was this originate? Chair and my colleagues here, during the 6th meeting of ministers responsible for finance, economy, planning, and the ministers in charge of integration in our member states and ADB board called for the enhancement of the monitoring and evaluation of Africa's integration through indicators. These shares of integration is these indicators. So in response to these, ADB, AUC, and ECA are now developing this regional index indicator. So, Chair, what has been done, of course, methodology and projects supported by AU, ECA, Conference of Ministers of Economy, Finance, and Planning that met, I think, in March this year, and the Conference of African Ministers in charge of integration that they met in 2014 agreed on this methodology of coming up with these indicators. Now, a text of the dimension of these indicators. Of course, as all of us, we are aware that SHASA is our pillar. Now, within SHASA dimension, where there are 3 pillars: economic integration, political integration, and the social cultural integration. Within that, an extended dimension, that is 7 dimension, will form 79 indicators together with those existing indicators for integration in Africa. And then these 7 dimensions are embedded within, for instance, economic integration. We are seeing the way it is being disaggregated. We have free movement, trade, and so on, social culture integration, political economy, where now we are talking about the security, peace, and so on. Chair have said methodology for computing index from indicators have been proposed and has been endorsed by our ministers and so on, and it will be finalized next year, February. Where we, as I've said, a conceptual framework for the calculation of index has been done already with FDB through hiring a consultant, and resources have already been secured, and training for selected country members have already been completed. Where several activities have been done, for instance, joint press release on tripartite. This is AUC, ADB, and ECA. The collaboration of this kind of thing has been done, development of online platform and so on. The paper which sits in front of you tells you all this next step that has been done. Of course, Chair, let me very quickly take my colleagues' expected output of this index that we want to construct for the benefit of African continent. A set of indicators to measure progress of regional integration. This is one of the output that we are anticipating to get. Policy recommendations to governments in the implementation of regional index activities. New and better data on regional integration in Africa that will help policy analysis. And also this will avail us African continent coherence and comparability indicators, these 79 indicators across African continent. Chair, let me very quickly jump on the recommendations. What are we recommending? We are recommending that from the group, we are recommending that participation of national focal points in training and evaluation workshop for the index. That now what we want is full participation of our national focal points that have been appointed, really to be trained, and of course to ensure the training that they are getting, the capacity should be created within our member states. The second recommendation, Chair, is collecting data and sending data to ADB, AUC, and ECA on time. But for us, we said sending data, that's one aspect. What we want is data has been sent there. When the data will be sent there, then we may select few national focal points to sit with these three tripartites so that they can also learn how to do the computation rather than leaving to ADB and these three to work on the analysis. Promoting the index by raising awareness of its importance and insight gained. Of course, yesterday we had the discussions here about how to communicate the information. Statistics is very dry. It's like a bone without a meat. So promotion is very, very important. So we urge you, really, all of us to play our role. And also strengthening capacity of national statistical offices and the allocation of necessary resources towards the index. Chair, strengthening capacity of national statistical offices means that if you look at what are the next steps, there is an activity of recruiting national consultant. I don't think we need to recruit this national consultant unless otherwise. We need to make use of our senior statisticians who are available in our country so that at least this money that will go to our consultant should go to this subordinates of ours in our offices, at least as one way of the incentives. So, Chair, this is really the rest of the materials are presented here in this paper, which all of us, I think, we had time to go through. I really thank you very much, Chair, on behalf of the group. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame, d'avoir respecté le temps et pour cette importante communication. Je passe directement la parole, Madame, pour présenter donc les rapports d'autres événements parallèles. À vous, Madame. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Rapidement, ma question s'adresse à l'exposé sur l'indice d'intégration régionale. J'ai vu que parmi les pays pilotes, ou plutôt les CER, les communautés économiques régionales pilotes, il n'y a pas la CAC. Je crois que beaucoup d'entre nous avions toujours reproché à la CAC de traîner les pattes. Je dois dire que depuis un temps, la CAC est en train de faire des progrès sensibles. Et la CAC vient de mettre en place sa stratégie régionale de développement de la statistique. Donc il faudrait que lorsqu'on pense à des choses aussi sensibles telles que les indices d'intégration régionale, qu'on ne laisse pas des régions sans point focal. Voilà. Ensuite, bon, c'est une remarque. Je trouve que 79 indicateurs, c'est quand même un peu costaud. Parce que, voyez-vous, c'est un peu le problème qui s'est posé avec les indicateurs des objectifs pour le millénaire. Il Il y en avait tellement que, bon, jusqu'aujourd'hui, il y a les pays africains n'ont pas pu répondre à ces indicateurs. Je crois qu'il faut sérieux, il faut aller pas à pas. Je pense qu'on peut commencer avec 20 indicateurs. Ensuite, maintenant, on va perfectionner et augmenter le nombre d'indicateurs. Voilà, Monsieur le Président.
Merci beaucoup. Guinée. Guinée. Celui qui a demandé la parole. OK. Le Kenya.
Oh, thank you. Mine is a quick one, Chair. I think there is need to set a target date for the implementation of the SNA 2008 so that countries would be working towards, because it is open-ended that countries are encouraged to implement the SNA 2008, but we need to agree and make a decision so that we do not keep on repeating the same, and the recommendations are always the same. So should be a specific date countries works towards the achievement of that. Thank you, Chair.
Merci beaucoup. Madame. Yeah. Yeah. Et rapidement, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to commend all the presenters and also perhaps to reflect on the requirements that most of the presentations include, I think since yesterday and day before, requirements for appointment of focal persons to all the initiatives that are ongoing, the initiatives by the Pan-African institutions across the sectors. I would just like to have maybe by the end of this meeting, that a list, something like a matrix of the requirements of focal persons that the NSOs are supposed to provide should be made available, so that we should really know. We've been accused of not responding, but if we can just maybe a brief description of the role of each of the focal persons per sector, then we'll make it things easier. Thank you.
Merci Madame pour cette proposition. Ok, donc je vais passer donc la parole aux orateurs et je vais commencer par Madame.
Thank you, Chair. I do agree on what my brother Pali has just said. And ICP, we have a lot of data sitting with us. So probably we should go back and look at what is available. And then if what is missing, then we can continue. But I don't know, since the decision has been made. So we still have a room to discuss more on this. Thank you, Chair.
Merci, Madame.
Merci, Monsieur le Directeur Général. Thank you, Commissioner of Zimbabwe. Moi, je me sens assez rassuré sur la possibilité que nous travaillons ensemble entre statisticiens et fiscalistes. Et effectivement, vous avez raison de souligner qu'il y a absolument besoin de réconcilier, enfin, en tout cas, de mettre en place une réglementation qui, pas forcément seulement permette, mais éventuellement oblige les administrations qui ont pour mission principale, comme c'est les administrations statistiques, ou comme mission accessoire, comme c'est le cas de la fiscalité, de collecter des informations. Les flux d'informations entre administrations, c'est quelque chose qui doit être organisé, enfin permis, voire organisé par la législation. Lors du dernier séminaire de Addis, nos collègues d'Afrique du Sud nous ont dit à quel point le fait que cette réglementation soit en place en Afrique du Sud a rendu extrêmement facile la possibilité pour l'administration fiscale de collecter des informations qui viennent de toutes les administrations. Les Sud-Africains ont par ailleurs accompagné depuis plusieurs années le Rwanda pour mettre en place de telles statistiques nationales, et ils nous ont dit à quel point le fait d'avoir aussi mis en place une réglementation sur ce sujet avait été une condition sine qua non, évidemment. Alors ceci dit, sur le sujet, donc je répète que le point focal généralement dans les pays, on essaye d'avoir un binôme entre la Direction Générale des Impôts ou Revenue Authority, enfin l'autorité compétente en matière de recettes, et puis le service administratif en charge de la comptabilité nationale, soit l'INS, soit l'équivalent du Trésor ou des grands équilibres, ici on dit en Tunisie, etc. Donc on essaye d'aller vers des binômes, ce qui déjà en plus a la grande avantage d'apprendre aux collègues à travailler ensemble et à se rapprocher. S'agissant du projet que je porte là, je voulais vous rassurer puisque en fait les problèmes que vous soulevez, ils existent dans d'autres pays, y compris les pays d'Asie et d'Amérique latine où on a commencé. On arrive à les surmonter parce que en fait la base de départ c'est la comptabilité nationale qui donc existe dans le pays. Dans les pays où il n'y en a pas, évidemment c'est problématique. Et à cette comptabilité nationale, on travaille ensuite principalement sur la réglementation en matière fiscale. Donc il n'y a aucune donnée nominative, individuelle. Et donc généralement on arrive à passer entre les fourches codines de la réglementation trop difficile. Et quand c'est nécessaire et quand c'est possible, on essaye avec les administrations fiscales d'aller plus loin en termes de désagrégation des données si les données contanates ne suffisent pas. Mais normalement, on arrive à faire ce travail sur un niveau suffisant pour être dans les standards du projet. Donc, j'espère que la Côte d'Ivoire va nous rejoindre bientôt, ainsi que le Zimbabwe. Je vous remercie de votre attention. Ah, mais j'ai pas eu de question du Gabon.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to take the two questions that were posed to me. The first came from South Africa, and he was recommending that we partner with ADB, just like we did in the ICP program. Yeah, that is a good suggestion, but I'd like us to acknowledge that the ICP, the SNA 2008 implementation, the program of activity is not as straightforward as the ICP program. For the ICP program, there was just one data source that was utilized to, come up with a report on the whole of Africa. But with the SNA, you need so many data sources, and we should acknowledge that countries are at various stages of implementation. Some of them are being limited, constrained by the data sources that they are using. And so that is why we are recommending that we do an assessment first to know the status of implementation, their weaknesses, their strengths, so that we can, the RECs and the Pan-African institutions and even governments can come in to assist. We are also recommending that AGNA comes out with milestones that countries will follow, and we are thinking that once they meet as a group and come up with milestones, they will be compelled to follow these milestones. And we are also recommending the RECs, that the RECs should monitor or provide targets for the countries to meet, and so they will be monitoring the achievement of these milestones. Kenya talked about setting a date for the implementation. It relates to what I've just said. It's a bit difficult, but once the milestones are set, of course there will be timelines, and member countries will do well to follow. So thank you for your intervention.
Mm-hmm. Tu veux répondre à qui?
Peut-être il faut traduire à madame. J'ai posé la question sur l'intégration de la CAC et de l'UMA, l'Union du Maghreb arabe, dans les pays pilotes sur les indices d'intégration régionale. Je n'ai pas suivi la réponse.
Madame, est-ce que vous avez des éléments de réponse? Ah, bien sûr.
Non, je pense que je peux répondre, puisque c'est un projet Union africaine, BAD, CEA. Pour dire que on a seulement eu l'argent pour conduire l'étude pour la SADC et COMESA et East African Community. Donc on va étendre ça progressivement. On va étendre progressivement à tous les règles. Donc tous les règles seront impliqués.
Qui a donné
Non, on va étape par étape, progressivement. Step by step.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Et vraiment, la séance est levée. Je suis vraiment désolé pour le retard accusé. Hein. Tu veux
There was an issue. There was an issue yesterday that we had to look at on the terms of reference. The team met, and I think for the heads or DGs can remain, and we discussed that. It should take us no more than an hour if we want to stretch it, but it can be done within 10 minutes. So 10 minutes, if we could, the DGs remain chair.
Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord? Les DG, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord?
Nous sommes d'accord, mais pas pour plus de 15 minutes.
Ok, allez-y.
It's closed session, so all observers should go out and the DG will remain. Tous les observateurs sortent, pas dehors. Là, le DG, il reste.